5th in world cross country. So although it's a shorter distance, it's the kind of, it demonstrates the kind of talent and tenacity and training that it takes to run a good marathon.
You know, I think Mekkinen's going to win. There was just a glance of his eye. There was a moment there where he looked over into the crowd, and he looked in the crowd like it registered. He was out looking and knew what he was looking at, which means to me he is so relaxed. On the other hand, Ikanga's eyes are kind of focused straight ahead. His mouth is hurting a little bit. Here it goes. Ikanga's making his move now.
Mike
right
Lynch.
early, really. He has been conserving himself. He was almost in a relaxation trance for the last 2 miles, and now casually he's moved to the front and put the hammer down, and Ikanga's going right with him.
Mike, how do they look from your vantage point?
Yeah, Natalie, here comes Ikanga again. This is just simply a matter of take that, take that. That's all it is. One runner would run out with one stride, another runner would bounce back. Treacy has picked up a little bit. He's probably 75 to 80 yards back. I judge it by the sets of street lamps. He has 1.5 sets of street lamps behind them, if that tells you anything.
Okay.
Well, this is a break here. This is, you know, the camera angles are deceiving. This is a definitive break. Look at, with every stride, Mekkinen's further ahead.
Yep. Mike, you can help us out better on that. How far apart are these two men?
Got about a 20-yard lead right now. Mekkinen just made his move. As Nancy was talking, he's about 20 yards ahead. And this could be the opportunity for him right here. We still have over 1.5 miles to go before we get to the finish line. And he just looked over his right shoulder to see how much he had. John Treacy is far behind now. He's a good 100, 120 yards behind, but the lead is growing. It's up to 25 or 30 yards now. Abigi Mekkinen, the police lieutenant from Ethiopia, now taking command. This is the biggest lead anybody has had in this race for the past 20 miles.
Well, there was a nice scene, just your average spectator off the street jumping out to give Mekkinen a little bit of water.
Well, Mekkinen looks to be on his way to complete perhaps the greatest weekend ever in any country's history of distance running, as the Ethiopians have swept 3 major marathons on one weekend. And in the World Cup, they even got first and second. This is amazing to stop and drink at this late point in the race. That's got to give Ikanga heart, that if he's going for a drink, he can't be feeling too good. Or on the other hand, he might figure he has so much, I've got time to stop and take a drink. But I think it's a little strange.
The drink isn't going to do him any good at this point. That's the thing. In general, if you're drinking that late in the race, it's because you're very thirsty, because it's not going to get into his system before he finishes.
Or it's what Marty just said. He's just so cool about it that he wants to let the guy behind him know he's got a lot left.
Marty, we've seen, it's been very interesting in the marathon running in the last few years. Oh, he took a quick look back over his shoulder. Now, some people think that's a bad idea. I always think that's a great idea. If you've made a break on somebody, and you want to know how well you have broken from them, I always, in my races, late in the race, will take a look back, and I want to know exactly how much of a cushion I have, because what he might do now is conserve a little energy here. So he made a big surge that took a lot of energy. Now he might run a patch here a little bit slower, a little more conservative, saving something for the last few hundred yards if he needs it.
But let's not forget that Mekkinen has not run Boston before, and sometimes you make that move too early, and then you come around the corner and you say, whoa, I thought this was the last turn.
Yeah.
Then you better check and see what's happening behind you.
Marty,
I'm sorry,
I started to ask you, Marty, it's fascinating. 4 years ago, we saw a country most people didn't know existed, much less where it was on the map, Djibouti. All of a sudden, the Djiboutians won the World Cup marathon, and they were finishing in the top 3 or 4 in every marathon they entered. Now, here we have another country doing the same thing.
I think a big part of it is you're only as good as the people you train with. Just like a football team or a baseball team, you've got to go to training camp and have no other distractions. And the Djiboutians went to France as a group, and they ran tremendously. The Ethiopians got together, trained together. What American runners aren't willing to do is give up the lifestyles that Americans have, their jobs or their homes, and go and live some place with 10 other runners and do nothing but running. And when a country does that with their best runners, they produce great performances. We see that this year with Ethiopia, and as you said, we saw that last year, 2 years ago with Djibouti, and we saw it in '88 with Kenya in the Olympics. You've got to have a training camp, not for 3 weeks before the Olympics, but for years. That's what the Italians did. But you're not going to get many American guys to leave home and everything that they built up and go train on a mountaintop.
Marty, these pictures are really dramatic. Look at the look on his face. It's just extraordinary study to watch him coming down, probably knowing that he's got the Boston one, but still obviously concerned that he could lose it, or you know, this is going to have to kick and really exert himself.
Well, he
in the last couple of
just
hundred
changed
yards.
his facial expressions. He just hit the wall now. Now every step is agony. It really hit him, and he's struggling. He is the second African to win the race, but really the first Ethiopian to win Boston, and the great Memo Wolde came here and could not win. So it's going to be a very emotional thing for him. And as I said, great national rivalries between these African countries, and it will be major news here in the United States, but if you can believe it, it'll be even bigger news in Africa.
Well, you can see the way his head is bobbing on his shoulders. That's how you can tell how uncomfortable he is. Remember early in the race we looked at them, and all the front runners, their heads were steady, but he's really hurting.
And his eyes are darting around too, as you can see.
Yeah, and he's kind of gritting his teeth. What really kills you at this point, I mean, it could be blisters, there's always something. But at Boston, your quadriceps, the front of your upper legs are screaming for you to stop. It is so painful. Greta Weitz, when she ran here and dropped out, couldn't walk up and down stairs for 2 weeks. She had to be helped in and out of the bathtub because her legs were that exhausted.
You'll get a good idea of how much of a lead he has as you watch the corner for Ikanga. Or could it be Treacy? Has Ikanga been broken badly enough for Treacy to pick him up? I don't know, but
maybe
in the
Mike
London
can see
Marathon,
them.
there'll be 3 more runners from Ethiopia, and then in the Paris Marathon, 2 more. So we're looking at one of the men from the greatest distance running country in the world right now, Ethiopia, as Mekinen, who was ranked number 4 in the world last year, will most likely win Boston as he comes on to the final stretch, and we now see no sight of Ikanga or John Treacy.
We can see him now even from our anchor booth on the marquee of the Lenox Hotel looking down Boylston Street. There he is.
He is now fighting to have the fastest time of the weekend for anyone from Ethiopia, 2:08:13, run by Benzimo at Rotterdam. That I'm checking behind me. I think that's out of his grasp now. He's still got over a quarter of a mile to go to the finish. He's not going to get Rob Di Castella's course record, and we probably knew that when the gun went off. But look at the lead that he's opened up on Ikanga, who probably will get second for the 2nd year in a row.
I can see Ikanga looking down Boylston Street. He's not in our picture, but you can see there's quite a lead there. There's no question that Mekinen is going to win this thing, and I don't see Treacy. I can't see Treacy at all. There he comes into the picture now.
John Treacy is making a charge.
I tell you, this is the greatest feeling in the world when you have... He's got a couple 100 yards, 100 yards to the finish line. It is a fabulous feeling with the band playing, people screaming.
Extraordinary race. Abibi Mekinen, age 25, currently ranked number 4 before this race anyway in the world, according to Track and Field News. Young man emerged as a future marathoner when he was a star back in 1984 when he finished 2nd in both the Munich Marathon and the Friendship Games in Moscow.
Marty, here comes Ikanga.
Great consistency for Ekonga, second at Boston 2 years in a row, and he made a lot of sacrifices. He really has been pointing for Boston for 6 months. He wanted to rectify the situation, but he wasn't able to. The reason, a 4:53 mile by Mekinen in the last mile opened up that gap. John Treacy with a gutsy race. He had to run the final of the race, the final 5 miles by himself. As you look at Mekinen, who comes to Boston and wins it first time around.
And he has the wreath. There's Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Murphy crowning the winner of the men's division. There goes John Treacy coming across the finish line now, the number 3 finisher.
Well, you see quite visually how fast he closed in this race, because just 3 miles ago, John Treacy was on his shoulder, and by the finish line, Treacy was still finishing, and Mekinen already had the laurel wreath on his head. So tremendous last 2 miles for Mekinen.
Now, where's Hussein? He really dropped out.
He's not in our
on
view
the
here.
street. We do have an update on the women's race, and there has been a change. Ingrid Christensen is still leading. Lisa Weidenbach is in second. Kim Jones from Spokane, Washington. There's Ingrid. She has slowed. I don't think Jones' course record is in jeopardy here. I had a feeling that the heat was going to take its toll. There's a picture of Joni Benoit. Joni is in 4th place right now. She still looks really good. She has such a determined way of running. She always looks very concentrated and centered in on the race. There's our leader, Ingrid Christensen. But in 3rd place, Kim Jones, Spokane, Washington. She was not one of my picks to finish in the top 3, but
the Olympic Games, he was the captain of the Kenyan team. Because of that, he was not allowed to train in his home.
McCullen heading down to the interview room with all the congratulations and well wishers. And last year's champion, the difference between 2 years. Last year's champion still out on the course. This year's champion well on his way to all the glory.
But Ibrahim Hussein will come back, because I think he ran better today.